Hi, my name is Sebastian Frierson, and I'm doing a biographical practice speech on Martin Luther King Jr. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This quote was written in the letter from Birmingham jail by Martin Luther King Jr. The meaning of this quote is that there is no continuous peace if there is a continuous struggle. For example, in Montgomery, Alabama, it was known to be one of the most segregated cities in the U.S. Martin Luther King Jr. worked to break from that segregation and help promote civil rights throughout the country. He wrote many credible sources, one including his famous speech during the March of Washington, "I Have a Dream." He also wrote many books as well, too, for example, "Why Can't We Wait?" and "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" He lived his life in segregation and took notice on how unequal and unfair it is. And during his young adulthood, he worked to break from that through non-violent methods and spread methods and peace along the way. His works was very important from the past and today's society. Martin Luther King Jr. is an inspiration to all of today's civil rights activists. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15th, 1929. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15th, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. Then during his young adulthood, he graduated from Boston University and got married and settled down in Montgomery, Alabama. Despite settling down for a peaceful life, King's family lived in a highly segregated city. During that time, he joined the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and in 1957 he formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. From there, their motto was to not harm and demonstrate nonviolent peaceful protests. In 1963, he helped lead the March on Washington, where he gave his famous speech, "I Have a Dream." In the line of effort, Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights activists helped achieve the Civil Rights Act of 1964. His works helped advocate civil rights and break down the segregated laws that restricted the community of the U.S. He helped influence those people during that time and people today to continue moving on and to ensure that no one is ever oppressed or have an unequal setting due to how they are and what they look like. He was one of the many leaders that demonstrated nonviolent protests, and it was very effective in doing so. In his term life, he grew up in a segregated state city, where he worked and studied to gain an understanding of it, and joined many associations to promote civil rights. His work was very knowledgeable, in which helped promote the Civil Rights Acts and helped change the future to a better one. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. was important because he was one of the few people who helped promote it. Without him, none of this wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here, or my neighbor wouldn't be here. Acknowledgement. I'm thankful for Martin Luther King Jr. for what he did to help out. He did a lot in effort. He did a lot to make a change to the U.S. And even though there's still some crisis that hasn't been settled yet, there are good people out there to help change that for the better future.